Hey guys, on this week's episode of the SP Mamas podcast, I have the absolute pleasure of getting to talk to Desiree Toppings, or some of you might know her as Lincoln's Treasures. She shares about some of the absolutely unexpected complications that came up in the birth of her two children, as well as her story in finding self-love for herself after her experience with eating disorders, unhealthy exercise habits, fitness habits, and now leading the charge in opening up about some of her own insecurities and vulnerabilities. Hi, you guys, and welcome back to the SP Mamas podcast. I am Carolina, your host and the street parking pregnant and postpartum coach. And today I am honored to have Desiree Toppings on the podcast. Welcome.
Hi, I'm excited, but excited.
Yay.
Honored myself.
Yay. Well, it's, Desiree, or Desi, I guess I can call you, or Des. You've been a member of street parking for about 2 years now. Is that right?
Yeah, a little over 2 years now.
Okay, awesome. And you have just such an amazing presence on social media. I know that you are a small business owner as well as a brand ambassador, and
Yes.
some of that is, related to your social media thing. But I think what I love the most about your social media and what I've seen from you as a person is just how vulnerable you are and your ability to share who you are and your experience and your strength and your hope so openly. And I know that you're a huge inspiration to a lot of the street parking community as well as myself. So I've been dying to get you on the podcast. So thank you for taking the time to join me.
Well, thank you. Thank you for asking me. So I was super excited.
Yeah.
But yeah, so now we're here and
Yeah.
I can't wait. I can't wait to dive in a little deeper.
Okay. So as you know, this podcast is about birth stories, or that's kind of how it started. And I'd love to get into that with you, as well as be able to talk about your journey, which if anyone follows you on social media, we can see that you're extremely fit. But I think that what is more important is getting to learn the fitness that you have in your heart and in your spirit,
Yeah.
and the healing that you've done. So hopefully we can cover some of that. But really, I just love to start with like your journey with your first pregnancy, and how that started with you.
Okay. Oh man. So I feel like both pregnancies, I've had complications during birth. And my first one was very, very traumatic. I didn't realize how traumatic it was until like my mom and I sit down, we talk about both of them, like just randomly from time to time. But I found out I was pregnant of Lincoln, which is my first. I do have an older son through marriage, Miles, and I met him when he was 3.
Okay.
And he'll be 12 this month. But with Lincoln, we found out Mother's Day weekend, so we got to surprise my parents. I loved being pregnant. I don't know. My husband likes to tell people on purpose that I'm so much easier pregnant than I am. He's like, you're just so much sweeter. Like you're easygoing. I'm like, what's that supposed to mean? But I feel like it was just, I never wanted to be pregnant at first. Like when my whole life, like I was like, okay, I'm going to be in the FBI. Like I went to school for criminal justice and psychology. And I was like, this is what I'm going to do. I'm never going to get married. I'm never going to settle down. Like that's not me. And I was like one track minded. Well, fast forward, I met my husband working part-time at Costco while I was in college playing softball during the off season. And then we moved to California after he proposed and we got married here. With Lincoln, we kind of like was like, we'll get off birth control. And if it happens, it happens. And so for me, like, it was just like, so overwhelming because I was never the person to see myself pregnant. But I didn't have any complications along the way, except at the very end. He was due the 14th of December. Come the 18th, I had another follow-up checkup to see how he was doing. And I told Mike, my husband, I was like, something's wrong. I don't feel him moving. I don't know, like I just feel it, like I sense it. So we get to the doctor's office and they're like, well, he's in the middle of a C-section. We recommend you go to the hospital now, just in case if something is wrong. Cause I was already over 4 days. And I was like, okay, well, I'm panicking. I ate a donut of a piece of a donut. I had some sugar, I had some orange juice, and I still couldn't feel him moving. And he was like a little wiggly worm. And we get to the hospital, they have me on monitors. Doctor comes in like 3 hours later and he's like, I'm sorry to let you know, but we're going to have to keep you. I cannot let you go. We see a dip every so often in his heart rate. Every time you have some sort of contraction, whether it's a Braxton his heart rate dips. And I'm like freaking out.
Yeah.
So he checks me to see my dilation. I'm at 1. So I'm like, I know for a fact I'm not even supposed to be here right now, like having a baby. And he was like, okay, well, I can't let you leave. It's either that or an emergency C-section, you choose. And I was like, okay, well, I'm going to stay and I'm going to try to do this. A couple hours pass by, we get to midnight and I'm still dilated 1. So I get to the hospital at 12. It was like around 11:30, 12 o'clock in the morning. 12 o'clock comes at night and they're like, you're still dilated 1. You're not even at 2. And so they gave me the Cervidil, and then she comes in at 2 o'clock in the morning. She gives me the Pitocin, and she's like, look, honey, I'm going to let you know this is going to be a long labor. I recommend epidural. She's like, because with the Pitocin starting, you're just going to feel so much pain and you're not dilating at all. And I'm like, oh my God. And I'm like shaking with nerves and I'm like crying. I was like, this is not what I had expected. Like my body was not giving, like it was not giving in. And I was like, oh my God, freaking out. And so I ended up getting the epidural. I'm so thankful I did, because fast forward to tomorrow, the next day, doctor comes in at 9 o'clock in the morning. I'm dilated 4. And I'm like, oh my gosh, my body does not want to give this baby up. Wow. And he checks and he's like looking at me and I'm like, what's wrong? Well, Lincoln's face up. And I'm like, oh my gosh, anything else? Would you you guys like to tell me? He's like, he's face up. Oh, the nurse that came in, she's like, okay, I'm here. I'll be here for a little longer. Let's try some different positions. And I'm like, by then I couldn't feel my legs at all. I'm like loaded up. I'm so swollen. And I'm like, okay, well, here we are. And then it was just so long. So the doctor comes in again. They had ripped my bag and still nothing at all. He comes in again. So Lincoln was born at 4 o'clock in the afternoon. He comes in again like at 3 and he's like, okay, that's it. You either have an emergency C-section. He's in your canal. He's not coming out. His shoulders are so broad. He's face up. He's like, I can either use the forceps or have you go to the OR. And I'm like, use the forceps, because he's the only doctor in the high desert where we live that is certified to use them. Yeah. And he's all the time in Nigeria. So I'm like, you know what, just use it, do whatever you can. He's like, I'm going to have to cut you. And I'm like, I don't care. Just get him out. And after 27 hours of labor, the forceps, he came out. He had a little cone head, but the umbilical cord was wrapped. It was wrapped pretty tight because he had it around his shoulder. So that's why I guess they were saying they couldn't flip him. Wow. Because they would see it's such a dip, and they were like, well, that's why. But now he's crazy and he's healthy and he's going to be 5 tomorrow. But it was just, I never imagined labor to be that long. And I told my mom, like, well, you were like 17 hours. I was like, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. But so it was long.
So you're saying you didn't expect it to be that way, or when they were telling you about the epidural or the Pitocin and Cervidil and stuff, was there any type of like plan? You know how sometimes some women will be like, oh, I know for sure I want to
Yeah.
have an epidural, or like there's no way, whatever the case may be. Did you have any type of plan going into it?
I wanted to do natural. I know my mom, because like she's like such like my greatest inspiration, right? She had all three of us natural. My brother was almost 10 pounds and she's a small thing. And she's also an SP member, but it was like, okay, I'm gonna do all natural. I don't want the epidural. I was so adamant on it. I was like, I'm not gonna do this. And then when the nurse came in at 2:00 in the morning, my husband looked at me and he's like begging me. He's like, please get it. He's like, I would never tell you to do something, especially it's your body. But he goes, nothing's working at this point. And you're just going to be in so much pain.
Yeah.
So it was just, I think it was like when the hospital that I gave birth at is a teaching hospital. So at the very end, when he used the forceps, there was about 10 nurses that came in to like see happening, you know? And it was just at that point, I was just like traumatized. Like, I was just like, oh my God, why are all these people in here? Like, they're all like seeing me. Like, oh my, I felt like my space was invaded, because I did have my sister, my mom, and my husband in there for both births. But the look on their faces, and I'm like, okay, what's going on? Like, is everything okay? But I was for sure, I didn't want the epidural, and then I ended up getting it anyway. And well, I'm glad I did, looking back now, because it was long. It was a very, very long labor. And I really thought, not that I'm against C-section, but I did have a plan for vaginal. But at that point, I was pushing so hard. I was trying so hard that I was like, at this point, something has to give. It's been 27 hours. He has to come out vaginal. Yeah. Like, come on, please. But luckily he did, and he's healthy, and he's going to be 5, and he's crazy, and he's great. And he's just, I'm thankful that everything came out at the end, it was fine. So.
Do you mind talking a little bit about what your recovery was like after that? Because I know that sometimes with like an especially long labor or an intervention like forceps or something like that, recovery can be challenging. What was it like for you?
Yeah. Okay. Well, I was in pain for the 6 weeks. Like, even when the doctor luckily he's so good with like stitching you back up, and he did a beautiful job. He did beautiful work, but well, at least that's what my doctor told me. But I bled so much, and it was like so much pain. And I was like, is this ever going to go away? But I feel like as a mom, and during that point of recovery, like, I didn't take the correct steps. I wish I would have, like, if street parking was, 5 years ago, I feel like my recovery process would have been so much more better, because I didn't start working out. Like, I went full throttle working out again after 3 months, and I feel like my body wasn't yet ready. Like, I was pushing myself rather than taking the correct steps with like stretching or breathing. And I feel like now that's why I have so much, like, the ab spasms come and go. And looking back, I'm like, well, if I would have took the proper steps to recovery, I feel like I was just like, okay, like, let's go back, no big deal. But in reality, your body inside everything's moving, it's adjusting. We don't know what it looks like internally. So now, I do, we have the movements, and with street parking, and like, I do take time to do that. And I even tell my husband, like, I haven't had a spasm in months, like, just little things like that. But I feel like in society, they don't tell us that part. Like, they just expect us to go back to what we look like. With that term, but they don't tell us, like, the recovery part is so important, because it does take time, and there is side effects to it when you don't take proper care of yourself, because it's 9 months. You just don't think about back, your body, your organs, and all that stuff, and your uterus after a week or after a day. And
right.
So, but I wish I would have. My recovery process was a little longer than I liked, but then again, I wasn't doing anything to help myself either.
Yeah. So, okay, so let's pause for a second because it sounds to me like you were already working out. Like that was a part of your life. Like fitness was already a part of your life by the time you
Yeah.
got pregnant with Lincoln. So, do you mind taking me back a little bit and talking about how you got into, you mentioned playing softball in college. Can you talk a little bit
Yes.
about how you got into fitness and like, and what that part of your journey has looked like before we talk about Lillian?
Yeah. Okay. So if we always joke that if my dad had an older boy, it would be me because I'm the oldest and then it's my sister and then my brother, but I'm his competitive, um, like just child. I'm his competitive child. So I started sports at a very young age. I was always like very competitive. Come high school, I had to choose between soccer and softball. I ended up going with softball. It just came more naturally to me. So I got signed for college to go to St. Louis, Missouri Baptist to play there. I played there, but fitness wise, at 17, my mom, my sister, and I all made a commitment in December before the new year came. We're like, okay, let's just start now. We have Cancun coming. Like we just need, my mom's always been into fitness. She's always been very like, she's always taking good care of herself. She used to do like the Cindy Crawford workout home videos. So I used to do them with her. And I would steal her VHSs and put them in my room and do it myself. But yeah, so we ended up signing up with a bodybuilding trainer who is now a lifelong friend. And he just guided us all the way. I know, like, for me, it was just at that point in high school, I had already started my eating disorder, but I was very secretive. I mean, I was always on the go, so no one could catch me.
Mm.
And so, like, I was very, like, my sister ended up being the one to catch me when I came home from college one time. But so I ended up going to softball, and I felt like my fitness kind of continued, but it was very healthy. I would wake up in the morning and run 5 to 7 miles, whether it was raining, whether it was snowing. It became an obsession. So it's like I started off healthy and then slowly like turned into like this obsession and just a disorder in a sense, because I started my bulimia while I was doing fitness. So I was only doing it because I wanted to look skinny. So I've gone through some periods, but like I feel like the beginning was like a learning block. And yes, I did a lot of damage to my body. But here we are. It took me 13 years later to learn, to be guided in the right way. And that's why I feel like I talk about this openly, but street parking, it was meant to be for me. It was like I walked into this relationship that I so needed for so long. And like the templates, oh my gosh, I've done every single type of like carb cycling, like you name it. Like I've done every type of meal, like nutrition plan. But like street parking for me just absolutely changed my life. It was not just the community aspect and the women and the empowering women and like the moms working in the garage without, a shirt on. And I was like, oh my God, I want to feel that way. But with the eating aspect of it, I felt like, oh my gosh, for the first time in my life, food is not the enemy. It's like, it's fuel for me, but
Wow.
it's such an emotional journey. But people probably think I talk about street parking too much, but in reality of a sense, like it's like this relationship I so longed for. And finally, I feel for the first time, like I can be the best mom to my kids. Like I can be the best wife to my husband, and I can be the best daughter and the best sibling. And like even my parents will tell you, oh my God, like you're always so happy. You're always so glowing. Cause I was not always a good person. Like I was just like grumpy and mad. And like, I like would slam the door, and I just felt awful about myself. So I projected it around all those around me that like truly loved me and cared for me, but I would slam the door in their face without giving them a chance to talk to me or for me to open up.
Yeah.
But
What do you think what would you say is like your favorite part of the street parking template or nutrition? Like what seems to make it such a healthy relationship for you?
the simplicity.
Mm.
It's so simple. And I try to explain this to everyone because I even have my mom on template, but it is so simple. Like it's literally all written out for you. And they even have like the times of the day all written out, like if you work out in the morning or midday or in the evening. But the simplicity of it, I do weigh out. I have a little scale, but it makes it easy. Like it's all written out. So I can't I don't have to use the excuse, well, I have to go look up how many grams or how many of this. Because I felt like that way I would get obsessive because I would, Google everything. But with this, it's all laid out for you. It's all formatted, so easy. And so for me, I was like, this is it. This is like, and then not even that, it's all the information. Like I've read through that packet so many times. And I've gained so much knowledge. And then it was just like, oh, so it's not that hard. It's not supposed to be complicated. It's just food. Yeah. Like just food. We just have such an emotional connection towards it as human beings that we forget that it is our fuel, especially if we do have we do work out, we do have a healthy lifestyle, like with fitness, like it's not supposed to be complicated. Right. So templates for me at least, I love it. It's just simple.
Oh, I love that. Okay, so then let's go back to the pregnancy and all. So Lincoln's born, you're recovering, life is moving on.
Yes.
What happens next?
Okay, so we have Lincoln and we get our first house and we're like, okay, and a year and 7 months later, we got pregnant, but we didn't know we were pregnant. We didn't find out so we got pregnant in November. We didn't find out until January, the week of my birthday. And we're like, oh my gosh, we're pregnant. And I'm freaking out. I'm like, oh my God, what am I going to do with 2 kids? And they're so close in age. And my mom's like, well, you and your sister are 1 year and 8 months apart. But I was like in shock because again, it was another thing. Like my husband's like, okay, if it happens, it happens. I mean, I guess it just worked out for us that way. With Lillian, so we found out she was a girl. We were ecstatic. Well, at least my husband was more than I was, because he's like, oh, because Lincoln and I, have I'm mom, so he's like so close to me, and then Lillian, that's dad. So knowing him, that's her best friend. I can't even yell at him or correct him because she's over there lecturing me. So with that pregnancy, I took better care of myself. Now with Lincoln, I did get up to 218. And so I gained 60 pounds with him. With her, I had a different doctor and he took very good care of my weight. He was like, look, you cannot go over this limit. If you are, I encourage you to drink more water. If you come in next time, you have to at least be the same, not over. Like we have to make sure we're taking care of you because your last pregnancy, that might've been the reason for so many complications. So he took really good care of my weight. I did only gain like 15, 17 pounds. But I felt better. I was more energized. I just felt good. And I had Lincoln to take care of. So, I don't want to be sluggish for him or always grumpy and moody, because I feel like the first pregnancy, everything you can imagine. And with Lily, I made healthier choices. And I feel overall that just impacted me in a better way. But come her, when she was born, when I went into labor, I did go into labor at home. So I was like, oh my gosh, it's happening. My husband's like, no, it's not. You don't even know what it feels like. I was like, what do you mean? You're the one pregnant. And then I was like, I know for a fact I'm going into labor. And so I took a cold shower. I did everything and I was pacing. I was like, okay, we got to go. It's 4:00 in the morning. We got to go to the hospital. So I get there and she's like, the nurse is like, well, did your water break? I said, no. And she's like, okay, well, we might just send you home. Okay, maybe do some more walking. And I was like, can you just check me? Like my dialect, please. I just know. Like I sense it. So they ended up checking me. They're like, sweetheart, you're only dilated 2. And they're like, we'll keep you just for a little bit because we're going to monitor baby to make sure she's okay. And then so they did a switch. And so another nurse comes in and she's like, you're dilated 6. And I'm like, oh, I knew it. I knew it was happening. It was happening quick. She came in 45 minutes later. And she's like, we got to get you in a room because it's happening fast. Doctor, we got to wake him up. He's somewhere around here sleeping. And I was like, okay. So they get me in a room and I'm dilated 7 by the time they get me in a room. And I'm like, oh my gosh. I'm like, just give me the, she's like, do you want the epidural? And I was like, sure. I already got it the first time. She's like, okay. And I was like, whatever. At this point, I just wanted everything to go simpler than the first time. I did have her in 3 hours, but after I had her, my placenta was giving me a rough time. It wouldn't come out. And what's going on? And I see my mom's face, and my grandmother, my dad's mom, her mother died. The placenta wouldn't come out. So she like death. So my mom's looking at me and I'm like, oh my gosh, she's freaking out. What's going on? And I'm like, Lily came.
Oh, hold on. You're frozen. Oh no.
Oh, I'm frozen?
There you are. You're fine. Okay. So I'm going to back you up just a little bit.
No, that's fine.
Because it froze. So you're getting pale. Your mom's looking at you. You have the retained placenta. You're worried because Dad's mom had a postpartum hemorrhage, and died from it. Sorry, go on.
Yeah. So my dad's mom's mom died from it in Mexico. So, I mean, thankfully technology is different nowadays and like science and all that. But, so all I remember is shivering, and my mom's like, she's losing a lot of blood. And then I'm like, okay, I'm losing a lot of blood. Like, what's going on? And then I look to my right, and my husband is pale white. And I'm like, what is going on? So they sit him down because he can't stand the sight of blood. And then the doctor comes in. He's like, I'm giving you an hour. After an hour, we're going to have to go scrape it out, and I'll take you to the OR. And I'm like, okay. And then my sister's like crying, and I'm like, my mom, and she's calming my mom down. She's like, if you don't stop, you're going to have to get out. Because you're going to freak her out even more. So anyway, doctor comes in and he's like, okay, it's not going to come out. We're going to have to take you to the OR. Take me to the OR. They pump me full of epidural. They scrape it out. All I remember is like, I could feel his hand in there and like just scraping. And he's like, if you have any complications at all tonight, if you start to bleed a lot, call us immediately, because it could be like little pieces weren't, totally removed. And I was like, okay. But at that point I was just shivering. I had lost so much blood. And even my mom was like, if she needs a blood transfusion, like I'm here, like I'll give her blood because we're the same blood type. She's like, I'll give her like hook me up. And I'm like panicking because I'm like, what's going on? But that recovery, don't get me wrong, Lily's recovery was so much better. But it was just like, I was like freaking out too inside because I had already knew the story of my grandmother's mom. So I was like, is it hereditary? Like what's going on here? But just seeing like my family, and especially like my mom, like it was just like put me in that spot. Like I can't, like I have Lincoln already, like, and Lily was just born. I was like, oh my gosh, whatever you have to do, just do it. But like, I have to come out of this okay. Thankfully recovery was like that, but went great. But I feel like both births was like, I was like, I don't know if I'm ready to have another one. If we do, it'll be a blessing. But I'm like, birth kind of has me kind of traumatized on both ends, but luckily both of them are very healthy. So
I feel like, and that's maybe something that makes it almost a little bit more difficult to like process, is just because they're healthy and like you're okay doesn't make what happened any less traumatic. Like it was a traumatic experience. And sometimes I think when we have to tell ourselves, or when we think we have to tell ourselves like, oh, but I know that, it could have been worse, or there are other people who have other more difficulties. It's like, it's taking away some of the permission to just be like, no, this was super scary for me, for my family. It was difficult for my body. And I think that, it's like some of that stuff that is just so unexpected, right? Like you go into birth, you know, it's going to be difficult or it's going to be challenging. We know that we can expect some like pain, and everyone always says like it's never going to go according to your plan or whatever. But then
Right.
somehow we are given like this, like the most unexpected variable that we cannot control. And then it's
Right.
how do you move through that? There are so many things about it that we cannot control. And yeah, I think that's just like hard, just it's hard. And it's okay for us to say like, this was hard,
Yeah.
scary.
It's taking me a long time. Like, that's why I was telling my sister-in-law this morning, because Lily's with her, because for some reason, every time I do any type of Zoom, like she has to be on my boob. Like whether she's nursing or just nursing, and she's 3 going on 3.5, and she will not let go. Thankfully I'm still producing milk, but for some reason she just always has to be on it.
Yeah.
But yeah, and I was telling her this morning, I feel like I've never talked about my birth stories except to like my mom or like her and my sister. But I feel as women, we try to discredit ourselves, but in reality, it's a different experience for all of us. So maybe if like we were to share it more often, which is why I love this podcast. Like when I comment that like it's one of my favorite, because it really is, because it makes you feel like you're not alone. Like you're like, oh, there's other moms that have gone through or are going through, or, whatever the case may be, because motherhood is tough. I cannot wrap my head around when people say, oh, you have the easiest job in the world. Really? Okay. Like, no, it's not.
You must not have done this job.
I have to raise a tiny human, like, who is like, I hope is like a good person. I hope I'm doing it right. Am I doing it right? Like all these, we always question ourselves, but I think birth in particular, everyone I've ever spoken to as women, they try to discredit, oh, but it wasn't that bad. And you're right. For me, it's still hard to even talk about it without saying, but they're healthy, because that's the only thing I feel like I can go like backtrack on, like, oh, but at least they're healthy. Like I'm blessed. But in reality, like it was hard. And I just feel like, oh, well, somebody else had it harder. And, when in reality, we're all different. But when you said that right now, it's like, yeah, because that's me. I always fall back on that. Oh, but someone else had it harder.
Well, I think that, and now hopefully you're a little bit further away from like the intensity of like the moment, the birth itself.
Yeah.
And life maybe gives you some more room to like breathe, and it feels a little bit more manageable. But for someone who is in it, in those first few weeks, months, sometimes even years after birth, when it still feels so intense, you can feel really alone and almost like, did I do it wrong? Like, is there something, am I doing it wrong? Why did this have to happen? And if we can hear other people, talk about like, it was really hard. It was really hard. Like you're not doing, just because it's hard doesn't mean that you're doing it wrong.
Right.
So, and there can be moments where it's like wonderful and amazing and all of that mixed in with like every single day is also very hard.
Right.
So, oh man. Also, I just have to say, like, they're just such beautiful children and they're just so cute. And I just love your videos with them. And I love that you share about your breastfeeding journey with Lillian. And, like how that just keeps going. So cool. I had some serious struggles with breastfeeding early on, but now it's like going strong. And I feel like Callie might be like Lillian. She's just like, she won't stop. So we'll see how that goes. But so I'd love for you to talk a little bit about what it is that has helped you heal as not just as a mom, but as a woman, and to overcome, the eating disorder or the unhealthy relationships with fitness and food, and how you've managed to do that, and also be a mom. What are what is how do you do it?
Well, I think, many times, social media is either the enemy or it's like it could be a positive light. And I feel like at one point in my journey, and it was the day I decided to take off my shirt in my garage, I was with the kids and it was a late night WOD for SP. And I was like, I want to know what that feels like. Like, why am I so embarrassed in my home? Like, it's my home, it's my four walls. No one's watching me. I'm not at a gym. I remember it felt so like this weight, and I was like, oh, this is what it feels like. And I was at that point, I had spoken a little bit about my journey beforehand, but I feel like at that point, that was the turning point where I felt like, okay, it's time to just unleash everything. Like, if at this point, my stretch marks are not going to go away. Yes, they're hereditary, but also because my mom has them, but also I had gained so much weight with Lincoln because I wasn't taking care of myself that, I have the loose skin and the stretch marks, but I was like, I have to stop hiding them. Like, this isn't me. Like, I'm not happy. If I could change at least one person, that's what I tell myself every day. I was like, not everyone's going to have this like the same view or opinion, or they're going to have an opinion of me. But at this point, it doesn't matter. If I could just change one person, women in particular, just their view on themselves, like, this is it. And I told my husband, you know what, like, I'm going to make the post. And I told my sister, okay. And I told my sister, I'm going to do it. You have to keep me accountable. And I finally made the post, my stretch marks and just my stomach, nothing else was showing. And at that point, it was like, at that moment, I was like, oh my God, I'm gonna get so much backlash. People are gonna be so mean. It's social media, whatever, yada, yada, yada. And I remember just all this love and support, and like women sending me DMs, like, I don't want to comment this in person, but that's how my stomach looks like, and I suffer from it every day. Or, even women talking to me about their own personal eating disorders. And it is, at that point, I was like, so many of us are suffering from it, but no one wants to talk about it. Everyone wants to keep it under wrap. Like, eating disorders, like, oh, I cannot believe the amount of women that are either currently suffering or have suffered, but they're so scared to come out and talk about it because they feel like people are going to criticize me for it. They're not going to see me the same way. They're just going to give me negativity, like, oh, she's just doing it for attention. Which, no, it's a real thing. And I'm sorry, some people do suffer from it, and it's harder for others, than some, but don't try to take away from someone saying that it's for attention. The same way, women, show your stripes, show your whatever, whatever it is that's keeping you. And for me, it was like, it felt so liberating. Like, I felt so free at that moment. And for now, and even when I still get messages today, it's like, I'm doing something that might help somebody, that they might be on the very edge, and seeing that post brought them back from making a mistake, from doing something that, they were going to regret the rest of their lives. And it was just like, as I continue with this, and, it was just, and I go back and I talk about insecurities all the time, because for me, like, I began, and, our household was so full of love. And I tell this, it was never you guys. You guys showed us all the love and support in the world. Like, till this day, they have us over weekly. It's only 3 of us. They have us over weekly. Like, we're so tight knit. We're always together. Like, my sister and I can't be apart for like 5 days because they're like, oh my God, are you mad at me? Super close, tight knit family. But I told them, it's not you guys. Unfortunately, this world, you can't protect your kids from everything. There's bullies in school. It's starting in 5th grade, and like, I wasn't comfortable in my own skin. I felt like if I, whatever I did, the whole, oh, if you work out, you'll look manly, like little comments like that, or, you're not skinny, you should look like that girl. See, if you look like her, you would be beautiful. And like, all these insecurities, but I tried to tell, I try to get the message across that our insecurities we're not born with, we were given. we gave it the power. And I wrote about it today, but we gave it power. We give them power on a daily basis the more we hold on to them. But it's like we have to put in the work every day to just, whether it's like manifestations or positive energy, whatever it is that helps you, podcasts or whatever, to let it go. And it really is hard. It's hard because there's times where I fall back and I'm just like, oh, like I have to wake myself up. Or I tell my husband, hey, like, this is how I feel today. I can feel myself starting to go down a path. And he's like, okay, well, what are we going to do about it? Like, you want to talk about it? Like, let's pull you back. And that's why I tell him, like, there's certain things like I cannot go down because once I'm down there, like I'll start to trickle.
Yeah.
But, it's a lifelong relationship with yourself. And that's what I feel like some people are looking for an answer, but the answer is within you. Like, you have the answer. You just have to, know that it's a lifelong relationship and progress. You make progress every day, but you don't have to change overnight. Like loving yourself is for the rest of your life, not just, for the next month or for the next week or for the next days, few days. It's just an everyday work. And I feel like, that's people are like, oh, you always look. And I was like, no, I'm not always happy. I don't wake up always happy. There's times where I have my meltdowns, but whether it's because I feel like I'm like not doing well as a mom or I'm, as a woman, or like my fitness is not in line, like whatever it is, but you have to be able to draw yourself back. And I feel like more for me, it's for my kids. Like, and I say this all the time, but they are my inspiration. Like, my mom was such a good mom that I feel like I not owe it to her, but to myself to at least come close to being like her, because even to this day, she was always going out of her way for us. And I'm like, man, like if I get even an inch close to what she was, like, I'll be like golden. I'll be golden. Like there's like, but I feel like, I don't know, like it's just a lifelong journey. And I feel like everyone needs to remind themselves of that it's not an overnight, success story. It's a lifelong journey and every day is going to be different. It's just, don't stop.
Right. It's like any relationship, right? I mean, I love my husband every day, but but sometimes like we gotta put in some work,
Yeah.
I gotta put in more work.
Yeah.
And that the relationship changes. And I'm sure that throughout the different seasons of your life, whether it's like when you're pregnant or early postpartum, or now you're getting further away from that. And like, how does your relationship, like your relationship with food and with fitness, and with yourself is going to change and evolve. And we, for people like us that suffer from, addiction or disordered thinking, we have to stay vigilant, I think.
Yeah.
Right? Just like you said, some of those little sneaky things that creep up
Yeah.
for us, we just have to like be vigilant and have the tools, and the support within us and around us to be like, hey, I see you creeping up on me, and this is what I'm going to do, to get myself back on path, or like back in the light. And yeah, and I see you doing that, and I appreciate your honesty with all of that on social media. And just, for the people that are listening, you share pictures of what your insecurities are, which I imagine might be the stretch marks, and for other people it might be other things. Like, we all have them, and seeing you being so open about yours feels like it gives me permission to be open about mine, and that is like powerful. So what you're doing is really powerful. And I was talking to someone recently about a friend who has a little girl, and we were talking about like, gosh, how do we teach a healthy relationship with our bodies? Like, how do we do that? And I think that we can only teach it if we have it. And so like, I just got to work on that myself. You know, when I hear myself slipping into some like negative language about myself or my body or whatever, food, it's like, she's seeing that and she's hearing it. And yes, sometimes that feels like a lot of pressure, but it's, I think like you said, it's a responsibility, you know?
Yeah.
So, tell me a little bit about the Self-Love Club and, and, yeah, just what you have in mind for that.
Yeah, I was just, out of the blue, I told, because my sister's my best friend. So I told her, I was like, I just want to start something. And I told him, and he's always like very encouraging. Well, just do it. He's like, I don't know what else to tell you. Just do it. Yeah. And so I was like, you know what? This is it. I'm going to make these images and this is it. This is just a self-love club. But the whole point of it is that, you know, it's a journey, and it's not, and I can't express this enough, but you know, whatever chapter you're in, that is your chapter. And I feel like the whole club is like, you know, I'll get messages. People are like, oh, well, I'm not 100%. So, you know, I love myself. I'm not like self-love. And I was like, well, that's the whole point, is that we're all at different chapters and like in our journey that, you know, I feel like we can all come together and share our own. And, you know, and I get to build these relationships, and even with like street parking moms that, you know, that have supported me, I'll talk to them. And like, when I'm feeling like, oh my gosh, this is so much weight, and like, I don't want to stretch my husband out, like I'll go to them, and like, I don't even know them in real life. And that's just like the community aspect of it. But I'm like, okay, I'm like really off lately, but I just want to let you know, like, you've inspired me, or like, you know, just, I do, you know, scroll sometimes for inspiration, because it is like, I feel like all these posts and like these stories that are being shared, but like the whole self-love club is just for, you know, like a safe zone. Like, I don't want to like people to feel like if they have to come in and they have to like love themselves like 100%, like, you know, I can't say that I love myself like 100%, because it's like everyday progress, you know, it's every day. Lincoln. Oh, it's hot.
It's hot.
It's hurting?
Yeah, because I was playing with my friend. That's why I was mad.
Oh, you were?
Yeah, eight times.
8 times.
It was hot. I feel it. It's pop, pops, pops, pops.
Oh, you better go put some ice on it.
It's pops sometimes.
Oh, I'm surprised he gets really, I'm like, can you just use your inside voice today? He's like, oh. But it really is I just want it to be like a safe zone. You know, everybody to share their own stories, whether it's with me or their own post. Because, you know, I love getting these tags or like finding it. One person, that's all I want. And then it's a domino effect. One person, and then they'll inspire their friend or someone they know. And then it just trickles down from there. And like, if we can all just love ourselves, like the world would be so much happier. And like, I'm like, maybe I'm too like naive sometimes, where I'm like, yeah, everybody's gonna love themselves one day. But it really is like high hopes, because it just takes one person to be like, hey, like, it's okay. And maybe, you know, you like, we're like, oh my God, it is okay. Like, this is not going to go away. Like, this is who I am. This is part of my past, my present. And I tell myself, like, what do I want to tell 15-year-old me if I could travel back in time? Like, I want to tell her it's going to be okay, that everything she's going through, like, people ask me, well, would you change anything? I was like, no. And I mean, yeah, we wish we could go back and we say, oh, I wish I could change that. But in reality, I want to be able to travel back in time and tell 15-year-old me, hey, everything you're learning now is going to, like, it's all going to come together. Like, you're going to help others. Just keep calm, you know, go through it. And it's going to be tough, and you're going to cry, and it's going to get hard, but just hang in tight. I promise you, it's all going to come together. And yeah, now like all these stories and these photos, and I'm just like, it keeps me going. There's days where I'm just like, I don't want to do this anymore. Maybe I should just delete it's social media. And it's like too like, yeah, I just like overwhelmed with everything around me. It's not social media itself. It's just like, oh my God, like I have all these things to do, or like my like, homeschooling and all this. And then I'm just like, hold on one second. Let's calm down. Let's like read through and look at, like, you have to remember that, people, there's women out there in particular that just want to share their story, that are like opening up to you, like, and I hear them and I get to write them back. And it's just like, I never thought in a million years that showing my mommy tummy would be something that would change me as a person. And just make me love I never thought I would ever love the way I looked. I always thought it was like, I wouldn't even wear ball caps because I thought I looked like a little tomboy. Like, I'm like, oh my gosh, I look totally like my dad. And now, like, I have like every SP color, but it's just like, it has been life-changing in the most beautiful way. Like, it's just beautiful to see all these women just accept themselves and just even post. When they post, I'm just like so in awe that it's like, see, it is a domino effect. And if we just keep it going, maybe one day, just one day, we will all love ourselves as we are. But,
yeah. I love that so much. You are just such an inspiration from what I see. I love watching the videos of you working out in your garage with your kids running around. It reminds me that, like, it doesn't have to look perfect. It can be a little chaotic, hectic, and I can still get it done. What you share when you share your mommy tummy and your heart, it reminds me that there is so much beauty in our stories, and what sometimes we a weakness or an insecurity to someone else is going to be like really empowering. Thank you for sharing some of your story and your experience. And I'll definitely include the links to your social media so that people can go and follow you if they're not already. And is there anything else that you want to say to the listeners or the street parking community here?
No, I mean, thank you for having me on, first off. But, really quick to the SP community, I'm so proud of so many of you that came out and just continuously share your journey, because you are inspiring to me and impacted my life in so many ways. And I just appreciate every single one of you, women and men. And yeah, I love you guys all. I cannot express how, into words exactly how much I love you all. And I appreciate you, Carolina, for all you do for us moms. Like, this podcast, like, what maybe you don't know 100% how it's changed my life. And I kid you not, I know for a fact that it's changed so many moms listening, and not just SP moms, but, women that come across it. But it really is empowering. And, I love listening and re-listening, but I appreciate you. I appreciate all the staff and, Miranda and Julian, but I'm just thankful to be on and sharing a little bit of my life journey and my birth that I've never even got to really talk, first time I've ever spoken about it. So, but I love you guys all, and I truly, truly appreciate you.
Thank you. And we love you too, and we'll keep following you. And happy birthday to Lincoln.
Thank you. Yeah, I'll let him know. A little so soon to be in a few hours.
Okay, awesome. All right. Well, bye, Des, and I'll see you on the Instagram.
Okay. Bye.